What is going on, everyone? I wanted to talk to you today about a build that I don't see very often and I think is a very viable option for tanks. Tanks in this game are kind of a mixed bag. Either you like it or you hate it. I've found more people hate it than they like it. But I have found a way to make it so that I can enjoy tanking, but still enjoy the game when I'm not tanking. So tanking is useful for PvE, for expeditions. It's useful for merc runs. It's useful for watermark runs, all that stuff. But then PvP and that aspect of the game, tanking is mainly good for wars as a sponge and to buff your teammates, but it's definitely not very good for open world PvP, soloing, stuff like that. It works, but it's not the most effective. So I think that turns people off, and I think people get a little turned off by the fact that the sword just doesn't do a lot of damage. So you're kind of gimped with the sword. Anyway, let's get into it. I look like a mage right now, don't I? I look like a mage. That's because I am running an Int build. So here we go. Let's take a look. Here's my attributes. I've got 253 intelligence, and I've got 145 constitution. There is a reason why I have 145, by the way, and I will show you in a second. So currently right now, I'm a con in mage. I do damage. I've got my rapier. I've got my fire staff. I've got my ice gauntlet. So I can use all these skills and be just fine. I'm in light armor, as you can see, light armor, and it's wonderful. But check this out. You want a tank? Yeah, do this. Ta-da. Usually I use this. And then heavy armor. So now I'm heavy. There you go. This is the normal faction heavy armor, and it works just fine for tanking. Honestly, I've tanked Genesis all the way to Lazarus and not had a problem. So you're asking, that doesn't change the fact that you're an Int build and your sword doesn't stack off of Int. That is correct. You are absolutely correct. And you're like, and you can't even put like an Int gem into your sword. And you would be correct there too. I have a Carnelian. You have to have a Carnelian to do taunts. Because if you look at the weapon mastery, you will see that if you have a Carnelian gem equipped in your sword, this ability will cause a 6-second taunt to all enemies. And this one is also taunt gem if you have a Carnelian gem. So you cannot make it scale off of Int. Okay, so anybody who's tanked in this game knows you're not doing damage. What you're doing is this. You are buffing your teammates. And I'm going to show you what that is. That is when you come down here and you have defensive formation while blocking reduced damage to all allies within 2 meters by 30%. That is an amazing, amazing ability. It will buff everybody for your expeditions. It will buff everybody for wars. And the shield itself is what you are using to mitigate the damage. So what I have is I have certain things that up my stamina. So I have this here that gives me 9% more stamina. So if you look down at my bar, I have 109 stamina. That gives me extra blocking, about 2 extra blocks. So I can hold this up for quite a long time and get smashed on for quite a long bit. Even a heavy attack from a hammer will not shield break me, and it will not stagger me because I have a little bit of extra stamina, because it takes 100 instead of 109. So I'll have 9 left. Then here's the most important part. Within the sword and shield territory area, I do not see a lot of people using this. It is invigorating bulwark. Gain 15 stamina while hitting a target with a shield bash or rush. So that's this skill and this skill. These are amazing when you're running out of stamina and you're in a fight and you don't want to put the shield down. You don't want to stop giving people the buff. Boom, swing that right back. Boom, hit that right back. And your stamina goes up enough. So it buys you a little bit of time. They're stunned. And then you can even let go for a second. Gain your stamina back the right way. And then boom, right back. Now, you're probably wondering, but what about your secondary weapon? Shouldn't you have a great axe or a hammer for CCs and stuns? And what about the secondary pulling for, what if there's ads and there's more mobs in an expedition and you need to pull them with a secondary, taunt. So normally, you have this taunt, right? And that's a 38-second cooldown. And if you were running a secondary weapon that was in the strength, most tanks run strength builds. And so you would run hatchet or you'd run hammer, and you can get those taunts. So you could have hammer, which would be shockwave. And this is Carnelian gem appropriate. The ability causes a 6-second taunt when it hits. Or you can run the hatchet. And with Berserker, this is Carnelian gem, and it causes an 8-second taunt to all enemies within 8 meters. So if you have Carnelian gems in either your hammer or your hatchet, you can pull extra mobs. I did that for a very long time. And what I found was it's kind of useless. Those little extra mobs that like pull off from your initial taunt, if you're doing your initial taunt properly, this big guy, and then you smack, a guy here or there that comes off, what you do is you swap to your fire staff, which I use mostly in expeditions, and you do that attack. What is that attack, you may ask? Let's take a look. So this is how I've spec'd out my fire mage. We have spell focus. You could take a look on your own. But basically what I'm doing is I'm giving myself as many abilities to pull aggro as possible. I do as much damage as possible. So instead of using a Carnelian gem, I'm using damage to pull aggro. I've already pulled a lot of aggro, and I'm already on the high aggro list for them. So by throwing in more damage, I'm then doing more. So this is Incinerate, and it's really great for AoE pulling of mobs because it does so much damage if you spec all the way down. So it does 130% weapon damage, pushes enemies back, which is great as a tank, and it catches them all, dealing fire damage, 3% weapon damage for 6 seconds, so it's a dot as well. And then it also adds burning, and it also gives you health back, so your healer is not working as hard when you cast this, especially since you're not shielding at that point. And then here is the way that you pull the aggro. Incinerate hits twice, 2 times the damage. Immediately you will pull aggro. So this is my go-to. This is my go-to for pulling aggro, especially in those situations where things are just flying. And I'll throw things on the screen here so you can see like expeditions I've done where this works perfectly. And then if I really need to do it, I can do burnout and just run through all the enemies, or I can just drop a fireball down on the ground, or I can just do the normal heavy attacks. The normal heavy attacks work great. The fireball does great as well. And then you can also, spin around the world with that. But then you just go back to your shield, and then you're buffing your world. The tank class in this game is not tied to your attributes. Nowhere in here or on any of these is it like tanking or taunting. None of this really helps any of that. So you could technically play a dexterity tank. You could play a focus tank. You could play a lot of different ways of tanking. You do want to get up to 150 in Constitution, though. So that is where this comes in handy. So I'm going to throw out my sword and shield. And this is why I have it at 150. Only when my shield's out, I have 150. So I take negative 10% to crit damage. I have gone all the way up to plus 20% increase to armor, and I just don't see a difference. The shield is doing all of the work. Your shield and your stamina are doing all of the work. Your armor is doing a very small amount. And when you have heavy armor on, that's doing even more of it for you. So if you're doing your job properly and you're not getting hit and you're timing, letting go, putting up, letting go, stamina builds, putting up, dodging here and there, reading the mechanics of the boss fights, stuff like that, you're not going to run out of stamina. See, look, watch. Stamina goes up. You can stop it. And then stamina goes up. And then you can use a skill. Use another skill, and it puts your stamina up a little bit more. So there are a lot of ways to get stamina without having to get out of the stance, which is really great. And you don't need to have that second Carnelian gem if you're doing a ton of damage. Now, here's another way that we do it. So the fire staff is what I do in places like Genesis because they are not fire resistant. Well, some of them. Most of them are not fire resistant, and fire damage does a lot of damage. If I'm not in Genesis and I'm in Lazarus and I need to protect myself, I put the Ice Gauntlet on. And this is why. Right there. That's the reason. There is a boss fight where this is the most useful thing for the tank ever, especially since you're right on the boss. And if you miss time the run out of the circle thing, just by a little bit, you're dead. So if you can do that, it's great. Plus, you can do a ton of damage with this. And once they fix this, where you can swap weapons and it doesn't disappear, it will be very, very powerful. You're going to want to have this one trait on your Ice Gauntlet so that when you have your Ice Gauntlet out and you're blocking, check this out. This is awesome for PvE. Blocking with Ice Gauntlet will convert mana to stamina on hit. 3 mana to 15 stamina. So look at that, boys and girls. When you're in the dungeon and you're fighting that boss and you need more stamina because the boss is just wrecking the stamina on your shield, bust out the Ice Gauntlet and block. And then go right back. And there, your stamina's built up. So you've got 1, 2, and then 3 ways to pull your stamina back up and then switch back to the sword without ever really leaving the circle. And you are just an amazing int tank. Most of the time when you're fighting a boss, even if you had a hammer or a hatchet and the second Carnelian gem, you're keeping your sword and shield out. And your sword and shield, believe it or not, for some reason in PvE, does a ton of damage already to monsters. It's not going to be as high as if you were a strength build, but it does enough to keep aggro and keep everything happy. If you look in here, there is on the third attack, final blow. A third attack in your light attack deals 50% more damage and causes more threat. So you're going to want that as well. So basically, you're just keeping threat. Keeping threat, you're letting your DPS do their thing. But when you have the threat or you have a moment to break out, your other thing, go for it. And then ice block while it's going. Ice block, the monster will be hitting you in the ice block while it's getting damage from that. And then boom, right out of that, switch, and then you're good. So you've got a lot of utility with this. It's a lot of utility. So I've talked about expeditions, right? Now you're probably wondering, well, what do you do in, wars? Well, this is where it's really interesting. So for wars, a lot of times tanks will be sitting on a point, right? And you won't be doing much because they might be going to A, they might be going to C, and maybe you're on B. So you're sitting there and you're like, you're there like this and you're not doing anything. You're like, okay, well, what now? Well, let's say there's a guy over here and there's a guy over there in the distance and they're DPS and they're picking at guys of yours. Boom, right from the point. You can hurt people. You can throw this at them. You can fuck with their back line. You can hit cannons that come up. If they start placing cannons and they start placing siege weaponry, you can hurt it. Big time damage. You can use that to stop a rush, a haste pot rush, because they'll run through the burning. If they run past you, you could just incinerate and hit everyone. There's so much you could do. Like the burning on that alone to stop haste pot pushes is amazing. And then let's say, after let's say they took a point, right? Now it's just 2 points. You probably want to swap off of your fire staff because this is not as good when there's just 2 points and they're focusing you more because you're going to want the shield out more. So you're going to want to mitigate damage and do more damage now. So this is where you take the ice gauntlet out. And that's when, let's say you're on a point, right? You're holding it. What you can do is you're going to swap to this. You're going to drop that on the point, let it go for as long as possible, swap weapons, get in there, and there you go. It is excellent. I have used the ice gauntlet to absolutely wipe people on the point because I come in there and I just start swinging and I buff my teammates and I give them that extra defense. It's a wonderful combination. It works in a synergy that is unlike any other I've done. I've tanked from day one until now in this game, and I found that this is not only the most fun combo, but the most effective combo, because that extra taunt, as much as it feels good to have that like safety net of, oh man, I'm not going to lose aggro on the ads. Sometimes there's just so many ads that you need something like the Fire Staff to just do a ton of damage. And this does it. Plus with the heavy attacks not taking mana, let's take a look at that so you can see the build for that. You guys can pause this too. I'll show you the builds for everything. But when you have this here, heavy attacks no longer consume mana, and you also have the one where it gives you mana. Where is it? Here it is. Restores 5% of your mana, max mana on hit, and also the reducing of Fire Staff cooldowns on hit. You are absolutely unstoppable from pulling aggro or just damaging everything down before it can do any damage to the rest of your team. It works really good in 5-mans. Works really good in wars. And it just works really good in general as a tank. And you're not locked into sword and shield when you're out in the world. You can switch off of that, which I do. So I use the rapier. And then I use the Fire Staff. And I use the Ice Gauntlet. And that's what I use in the open world. And then when I'm in a dungeon, I use sword and shield. And I use sword and shield with the Fire Staff. And I use sword and shield. And I use sword and shield with the Ice Gauntlet. And then when I'm PvPing, here's something very cool, is that I will mostly use Fire Staff and Ice Gauntlet for PvP, these two right here. But depending on what you're doing, sometimes you can throw out the Ice Gauntlet and the Warhammer. So the Warhammer, with the rend and the stuns and everything, you can hold someone in your Ice Gauntlet frozen area for a long time. Also with the Fire Staff, you can use the hammer and the Fire Staff. They're just an awesome combo together. Between the burn damage on here and the stuns on here, you can lock someone down and they'll never get a hit off of you. And if you put the right gem into your Warhammer, you can have it go off of int. However, I don't even find that that's necessary. I just use 10% damage against targets with active crowd control because it does so many stuns. So you'll be just fine. This is the other thing, and this, I don't have a video of this, but this is the last thing I will say that makes this a really cool build. Let's say you're fighting ranged in a duel, okay? Dueling, people love to duel. I'm not a big dueler, but I enjoy it here and there. One of the cool things during a duel is the ability to switch to sword and shield. I was making a joke the other day because this guy was so good that we started doing group duels where it was 3 versus 2. And I was like, man, it's like going through the ads to get to the fucking raid boss. And so I was like, I'm going to tank you. And so I pulled out the sword and shield. The guy was a bow user with a rapier. Okay. Very deadly if the guy is good. So I pulled out the sword and shield because I was doing Fire Staff and Ice Gauntlet. And I was just getting wrecked. I couldn't get out of his line of sight. He was pinging me hard. I swapped to my heavy gear right here. I swapped to my heavy gear. I threw on the sword and shield and the Fire Staff. And I have played every class in this game, so I know the timing on his bows. So I would block for the bow. I'd bring it down, get my stamina up. Block again when he was going to shoot again, and then bring it down for my stamina. Block again. And then when I would get closer, see how I can get closer. And every time he shoots, he pauses. And so this helps you in that 1v1 duel. He cannot do damage to you, plus you get the heal from Defiant Stance. Helps a lot. And once you get up to him, you start swinging. He freaks out a little bit. He switches to his rapier. You block the crap out of that. Then he like tries to run away. While he's running away, you hit him in the back with every fire thing you have. Just wreck him and just chase him down. You know what I mean? And then boom, come out with your sword and shield again and just mitigate all his damage. Plus you have the extra stamina and you're good. A lot of people are going to be very confused when they see you come into a dungeon and you have an Ice Gauntlet or you're wearing a Fire Staff on your back. They're going to think you're bullshit. Whatever. Screw them. This is an awesome build. It's an alternative build. New World lets you play around with your builds in a way that is not, you don't have to be throwing attributes into strength. You don't have to do the dexterity. You know what I mean? Like you can play, you don't have to be a constitution tank. You don't have to go all the way up to this to just tank. Your health pool it matters a little bit, but your blocking matters more. That sword and shield is what makes you a tank, not your attributes. So with that in mind, once you're done and you've tanked and you want to go back into the world and you want to do some fun PvE or PvP, and you don't feel like doing the tanking because the sword is just kind of crap, you take off the shield and you throw on whatever weapons you want from the Int world, which will be the fire staff, the ice gauntlet, the rapier, or the musket, and just have fun. Get that double dodge. Oh yeah, it's so fun. So yeah, that is why I look like a mage, and that is why I am still a tank. So this is my explanation of what an Int tank is. I know it's a little long. It's a little long-winded. Kind of a lot of information to talk about, so I hope it wasn't too long for you guys. If you enjoyed it, great. If you didn't, dislike it. It's all good. Thanks for watching. Also, if you need a company, check out Crafting Worlds, man. We got a great company. We got a lot of people online. We got a lot of players. We have a fun time. Casual people, PvPers, PvEers, PvXers, whatever. Go to discord.gg/craftingworlds. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. And I hope you can try something new, because I hear a lot of tanks going, man, I don't want to tank anymore. It's boring. Well, guess what? This isn't boring. This is a lot of fun. And you're basically 2 builds in one. So check it out. Try it out. See if you enjoy it. If you do, awesome. If you have another fucking build, let me know. Love to hear about it. Sweet. Later.